Welcome to At the Table, a podcast by the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Lolli, co-director of OLAC. This is a space where Ohio education leaders come together to explore timely and relevant topics shaping leadership, learning, and school improvement across the state. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or classroom teacher, there's a seat for you here. Let's get started. Today, my guest is Stacy Maney, newly appointed superintendent of Miamisburg City School District in Montgomery County. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you.
And congratulations. We're so happy for you. Stacy, could you talk a little bit about some exciting things that you know are happening or will be happening in Miamisburg? Or if you would rather talk about your current school district, you're welcome to do that as well.
Sure. I'd love to. And thank you for having me today. Some exciting things happening in Miamisburg in particular is we will be rolling out our Science of Reading curriculum this school year. And so we're very excited about bringing that in district. And we're training teachers over the summer. We have materials in hand. And so that is our biggest initiative this coming school year. And excited about that work, excited to connect that work with some data and start to get our staff moving forward.
Excellent. Science of reading is such an adventure anyway. Many of us who've been around a long time have been doing the 5 components of it, and to repackage it a bit and to have teachers understand that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater is a big challenge. So good luck with that.
Yes, thank you.
I know you'll do well with it. You've used data in a lot of different ways. As a principal, you used it as a teacher too, but as a principal, you used it extensively, both at the elementary and the middle school level. And then whenever you were in the HR capacity, you used data in HR. And then as an assistant superintendent, working with principals, you use data in that way. Can you talk a little bit about some of your data experiences and some of the data that you find most relevant and pertinent?
Yes, I'd love to. And you're absolutely correct. I've used data in every role. And, becoming a principal, I remember we did our teacher-based teams weekly, but that process of unifying some formative assessment data, using formative and summative assessment data, so MAP data, our short cycle assessments, and pulling teachers together weekly to really connect the data to what they're doing in their classroom and encourage that space, that professional learning space that happens when we have same data points to talk and plan together. That was really critical, and it really became a point of enjoyment, I think, for myself and my teaching staff as a principal. And then moving through human resources and even just a central office as an assistant superintendent, using all data points to always monitor our progress, monitor where we are, where we're going, is critical to the health of a district. It's critical in attendance, academics, even the data you collect from your staff for the culture of a district and the achievement of our staff is critical. So I've enjoyed the implementation of data throughout all of my roles. And while the data points change, the process doesn't really. Just continuing to use it and look at it and to drive improvement is critical.
How do you determine which data points to actually use? Because there are many, many sources out there. There are teacher-developed tests and quizzes that count for data, teacher observations that they can do for data. You have MAP, which you mentioned, yes. The OST data, all kinds of other data are floating around out there. How do you make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself as an assistant superintendent, as a principal, as a teacher, and you don't overwhelm others whenever you're using the data and deciding what data points you need to look at for this particular task?
Yeah, great question, because you can almost get paralysis by analysis if you have too many data points. So, and I know working together with you in Dayton Public Schools at the district leadership team level, we were very good about identifying root causes. And so by having those types of conversations, which I've applied in other positions, you identify what are we trying to address. And so for me, in my leadership style, it's been about identify what we're trying to address, and then the data point will reveal itself. And then that keeps a very streamlined data process that's not overwhelming. The other thing that happens sometimes, as I think groups of administrators, teachers, we want all of the data, and that makes a robust data pool, which is important. However, sometimes certain data points are almost telling us the same thing. And so the idea that we identify and or prioritize data points becomes critical in having the conversation so that we don't overwhelm our groups of professionals as we make decisions.
That's a great point. How do you make sure that when you're supporting teachers in using the data, you talked about your teacher teams of data watchers, teachers that are looking at the data on a continuous basis. Your building team is always looking at the data. The district team is hopefully looking at the data, or a district level group of administrators and teachers are looking at it. How do you make sure that everyone knows what the data are actually telling us? How do you support that work in them understanding the data?
Mm-hmm. Sure. That begins with really training about the data point and the system and or assessment that we're giving. So if you have a core foundational knowledge, for example, of what NWA MAP does for our students and what it will show us, if we develop our teachers and our leaders to know what will be delivered and the assessment itself, then we really know what we're looking at. So it begins with training and teaching. We are currently in Lakota, we are currently rolling out and making our TBTs, or our teacher-based team, our team data meetings, teacher data meetings, universal. So we are kind of reinventing ourselves a little bit in that way at K-6. And so we are addressing what data points specifically we'll be using together. So we've pulled teams together of teachers. We've included our curriculum team, our building administrators, and we're identifying the data points that we want to use. So that comes with, does everyone understand what the assessment is telling us? And if they do, then we're able to know what that assessment point actually means when making decisions.
And once you know what it means,
yes.
So what?
So what? So now what?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So once we know what it means, we talk together about, if it's at the teacher level, what instructional strategies are high yield strategies, are most impactful, best practices. So it needs to work in collaboration with our working knowledge of education and best practices and high yield teaching strategies. So that's at the teacher level and at the school leadership level. Being an administrator, I work with principals and assistant principals. And again, we're talking best practice. What is best practice in leading a professional learning community? What is best practice in leading a teacher data team or a building data team? And so we collaborate and coordinate our best practices, high yield strategies, and what we know about education with the data point to hopefully get the perfect kind of triangulation to see the outcome we're looking for and the increase capacity.
That's great. That's really, really good work. Do you have any kind of data support system in Lakota that shows the data right at your fingertips? Isn't anything available?
Yes, we absolutely do. So we have a district level data dashboard, and it's a dashboard has been something that I also have had in other districts as well and plan on having in the future. It's critically important. In fact, I was speaking to a principal today on the drive here about that data dashboard and how it's your one-stop shop to be able to pull up data that shows us the whole picture of district level, building level, even down to individual student level, where you can see what's happening with a child at that individual level, or if we're in a district leadership type situation, what is our district data telling us holistically? As we know in education now, everything plays a part. Everything plays a part, everything comes together, and you hope you get the best alignment for the outcomes. But so a data dashboard is critical to be a one-stop shop. And then, so we try our best. We were also in a meeting just yesterday talking about what systems we have in addition to that data dashboard, and can we streamline? Do we have systems in place in the district that are overlapping in how they can deliver and what they deliver in their models? And so we want to make it as succinct and direct as possible, but we also want to make sure we have the full scope represented. But yes, a data dashboard is the one-stop shop.
I think it's really important to make sure that the data software pieces, the data dashboards, that there aren't multiple ones, because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to a teacher. It's overwhelming to an administrator, and it really isn't used very well. So when you think about what the perfect environment would be for your teachers, What might that look like
Sure.
as far as introducing the data to them, having them analyze the data and use the data?
Mhm. Yeah, so the perfect environment for that, right now we're setting up the very basics. So foundationally, the regular meeting time, a pre-planned open agenda that looks the same for everybody, a pre-communicated, because being clear is critically important, and communicating, here's what we want to talk about when we meet, so teachers can feel prepared when they come to the table. Teachers know their children, they know their students, but they can be prepared to know exactly what data point we're going to be looking at if we communicate first. So setting that up is important. Also, you mentioned how it can be overwhelming with different data sources or locations. By making sure we're all using the same one, when we come to the table together, the data is in the same format. It looks the same. It's easy to look right across the board and see these 10 homerooms in first grade. Here is the data, and it looks the same. So that begins the consistent conversation, the clear expectations, and then from there, we're able to say, we're seeing this data and we can point out the outliers, the high successes, or the areas for opportunity. And then we start to dig into the work of, in those areas for opportunity, let's talk to who is getting success. What did you do? What are you doing in your room, and how do we apply that?
You mentioned earlier about teams of teachers looking at the data, building team looking at data, the district team looking at data. Have you used any of the OLAC tools to support any kind of that work at all in any of your districts?
I have. In fact, myself and the K-6 curriculum team, about 7 of us, were reviewing. We were on OLAC just the other day, and we've pulled some resources off of OLAC, which includes videos, as well as the modules, the templates there, are going to be very helpful. There's in particular, a TBT agenda form that we are going to use, and we're going to tweak it to customize it to what we need, but it is a great foundational piece. We log in there. That resource makes it easy for teachers to go on, for principals to go on. So I myself separately have been on OLAC and talked to my principal at principal meetings and trainings about reading and watching the resources that are on there for building administrators specifically, and then them disseminating the information to teachers to go on there. Sometimes teachers and professionals at all levels like to look at resources just individually. Sometimes that learning and growing my professional capacity feels good to do independently a little bit, because I might have some gaps or things that I want to learn, but I maybe am not vulnerable enough to want to share with the group. So it's a great resource that everyone has access to, but we can also pull together and use on our agendas and use in meetings to implement change.
That's great. I think the OLAC website has a wealth of
It does.
information, and I've used it for years. And of course, we continuously update it and change things around so it stays relevant for people. And I really think that no matter what changes we face in education, shared leadership through teachers talking to teachers, teachers talking with their administrators about what's happening in the building, teachers talking to the central office administrators, principals talking to central office administrators, no matter what you call those types of groups of people talking about the data, I think the OLAC materials are very helpful in providing resources. They're helpful in providing structures and things like that.
They do.
So I think it's no matter what we call it, I think it's a great resource for us. I want to change topics just a little for a few more minutes of our podcast. You recently became superintendent in Miamisburg, and we said congratulations. I'm so proud that you're able to reach one of your goals along the way. Can you talk a little bit about your leadership journey and the supports that you had, and even along that line, some of the barriers that you had to overcome in order to become a superintendent in a city school district?
Sure. So I'll start with my first principalship. And I started my first principalship, as I think we all do, very excited and also very green. So you don't know what you don't know until you get there. But I will tell you that part of my experience has been tribulations that have come across my desk. So my first year as a principal, at that time, the structure of the district, I did not have an assistant. Had about over 500 students, between 5 and 550. I did not at that time have an SRO, which is very common now in most buildings across the state, across the country. And about 2 to 3 months in, my secretary decided to take a different career path. So I very quickly learned how to multitask and do everything that was required, but I wouldn't take that back for anything, because that time where I learned how to do the orders, I learned how to make sure payroll was processed so no one missed a paycheck. Meanwhile, I'm meeting with teachers once a week and talking data and talking instructional practices. I'm making sure I'm getting into classrooms. It created a year for me that was kind of like a boot camp, but I wouldn't take it back, because I have found, and then I changed directions, I should say first, and I've done principalship in both elementary and secondary at a middle school. And then I led an HR department, a human resources department, and all of those experiences and tribulations combined have brought me to this point. And as I step into my first superintendency, I recognize that there will be things that I don't know yet and things I will need to learn. However, I am very confident that there probably won't be a scenario, or very few scenarios, that I haven't encountered in some way before, and I won't have a tool in my toolkit to be able to problem solve it. Being able to lead others when you've actually done the work that they're doing, I feel is pretty critical. Being able to lead others with trust, having had a track record of success or making some positive change is critical. People want to learn and grow from administrators and leaders who they feel have walked in their shoes before, who they feel can be trusted because there have been outcomes that have been positive. So all of those things have brought me to this point in my career. And I look forward to tapping into all of those past experiences. I look forward to being hands-on. I like to be very integrated with my teams. I am equally as a participant in the team as everyone else is. And so I love to be hands-on with the work. So I look forward to that. And there have been barriers along the way. Early on, I became a principal in my very low 30s. And so there was some, consideration about being young or being too inexperienced, or even being female, when sometimes there's a perception that a strong male is what we need in certain buildings. But I would challenge that a strong leader is what we need in buildings, no matter what that looks like or no matter what the background is. And so I've just enjoyed every step of the way. And I think every experience and challenge is what makes you ready for the next step.
You said a strong leader
Yes.
is what we need to look for. What knowledge, skills, and even experiences does a strong leader need to have in order to be successful?
Sure. I believe a strong leader is someone, communication is key, someone that's communicative, someone that can look at the system or look at the room and see the whole to part as well as the part to whole, someone who is willing to recruit and include and lean on and collaborate with those that are experts in their area. I believe the best leader is not the smartest person in the room. The best leader is the one that builds the team of the smartest people in the room. I like to look for experts. I may know something about a certain area, but I want the person who's the best in that one thing, the best in that early literacy, or the best in even attendance incentives or positive behavior management. I want the best to bring the team together and listen and share the leadership a little bit. So I believe that's what makes a strong leader. I believe a strong leader has to be willing to tap into the resources, like the OLAC resources, and bring them to the table. Give your people a rich toolbox with multiple resources, because you never know. You have to recognize who on your team learns in different ways and how they need to receive the information. I might have a team member who they need to watch a video. They need to watch this podcast. It might help them. Some of them need to talk through it. Some of them do better if they have a book and they can highlight. So provide those opportunities, a variety of opportunities, and grow the best out of your people.
And I think that whenever you talk about those skills and those experiences, I think a lot of times we don't really key in on those whenever we're looking for strong leaders. So it's good to hear you say those things because I know that's something you'll be looking for as you hire new leaders for your district. You know, you were a teacher, you were an assistant principal, you were a principal, then you moved into the central office, then you moved into an assistant's role as a superintendent, assistant superintendent, and now you've moved into a superintendent role. What would you say about that path, that career path that you took? For example, is it a better path to take that and have all those experiences? Is it a better path to be able to go from immediately from a principal to a superintendent position? You're in the throes of it right now. What do you advise to others who are looking to become superintendents about the path that they might want to consider to be well prepared?
Sure. I would advise the more experiences you can get, the better. I would advise that you are in every position you're in, you are fully in that position. You give 100% every time. You become a sponge. You learn in your experiences and you are in a constant state. We've talked about improvement, using data to improve. You need to do that internally as well. You need to look at the data, reflect on decisions you've made or processes that you tried. And if they're the best and you feel you got the outcome you wanted, great. Keep that in your arsenal. If they're not, be open to change. Be open to self-reflection. If you're going to lead an improvement plan or process, or you're going to lead a data dive, be willing to do that with yourself. So my best advice is have as many and varied opportunities as you can. I'm so grateful, and there was some intentionality, even when I was in positions that I loved, and I would have called that school like my second home, and I wouldn't have left it for anything. There was some intentionality to get a variety of experience. There was intentionality, and even as a teacher, at some point in my career, I've taught every grade K through 12. And I was purposeful in that way to make sure I've walked the walk, because to lead, I need to be able to not just talk the talk. I need to be able to at least have had a tiny bit of an experience to relate. So my advice is become a sponge, self-reflect, and get as many quality experiences that are varied as you can.
I really appreciate those ideas. You've been great in sharing your expertise in data and also the leadership work that you've done. You've had an incredible career so far, and I wish you well as you venture into your first superintendency. I know that Miamisburg is very lucky to have you as a new superintendent. Thank you for joining us at the table. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Lolli, and it's been a pleasure to have you with us. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe and share with your colleagues. For more leadership tools and professional learning resources, please visit ohioleadership.org. Until next time, keep leading with purpose.